Good morning, everyone. Some of you are with us, that's good. So welcome to this talk on primary education and teacher training, of course. So my name is Paul. I'm a senior consultant in physical education, so that's my specialist area. But I also have my focus on the primary phase, which is why I'm here, of course, talking to you guys. So I've got lots of slides, stuff with information. I'm pretty sure that should answer any thoughts and any worries and concerns that you may have. But of course there will be time at the end for you to ask questions. I won't ask you up here for the camera or anything, but just shout out your question if you have one, and then obviously we'll try to address it there. So, the routes into teaching for primary. First of all, there are two strands to the primary PGCE. So the first part of it is QTS, Qualified Teacher Status. That's what you need to get your first job. And the other part of it is Master's credits. So in order for you to achieve a postgraduate certificate in education, you need to complete 3 different Master's modules. So I'm assuming that most of you are probably in your final year of your undergrad degree and stressing about your dissertation perhaps, and you're obviously level 6. When we get to PGCE, the Master's aspect of it, there's an expectation that you will start to work and reflect and to write at level 7. So it really steps up a little notch. So there are 3 different aspects to our primary PGCE. So you'll see here, first of all, there's age 3 to 7. So that's if you're interested in early years or foundation and into Key Stage 1. And then the primary 5 to 11, that's obviously Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 together. So you can have a focus on just that primary age group and not bother about the younger ones in foundation. And we have the add-on as well, so that's one course, primary 5 to 11. But we have another course, which is one I look after in particular, which is where you do primary 5 to 11, but with the addition of a PE specialism. So just to be very clear there, you're not training on my course just to teach primary PE. You're training on my course to be an amazing classroom practitioner, but you'll have this specialism, the addition of being able to teach excellent PE as well. So you do many more PE tutorials throughout your PGCE year. And also your placements will try to reflect that. For nearly all of these, you can do this through a provider-led route, which means you do most of your training with us at university and we find placement schools for you. Or you can do it in a schools direct format, which is where you would be based at a school and do some of your training at a school and you do your placements at their partner schools. And I'll come on to that in a bit more detail very soon. Now, I would always want you to come to Leeds Beckett University, of course I would. But then, and I'll say how wonderful we are, of course I would say that. But the National College, which is this, the NCTL, the National College have continually over the last couple of years increased our allocation of numbers of trainees we can take onto our courses. And that is because they recognise what a good service that we provide. So it's not just me saying it, it has been recognised nationally. And this year we've got just below 80 places, and that is compared to just under 60 last year. And again, next year they've actually uncapped our allocation. So we could take thousands, but we can't really, because of course that means space and we need to look after quality of teaching and everything else. So it's likely we'll maybe be looking at up to 100 primary places next year. And that within that 100 there'll be some 3 to 7, some 5 to 11 and some 5 to 11 with PE. You'll understand what I mean by all these things now after I've just explained. Good. So as I say, it could be me just saying that, but we have evidence now that kind of proves that we're providing a good service. And we know this because practically everybody were qualified at the end of last year, and all of the outcomes, all of the outcomes basically were based, our teachers became either outstanding teachers, outstanding trainees, or good trainees. So that's using the Ofsted terminology. And also, everybody got a job after they qualified as well last year. So really strong there. So what are your options if you like the sound of some of these courses? So 3 to 7, you could go provider-led or, well that's of course, or schools direct. Same for primary 5 to 11, but the primary 5 to 11 with PE, the only option there is to come with us on provider-led. So that's not offered in a schools direct format. Now bursaries, these change quite a lot, but of course they're quite useful as you get into your teaching year. Now this is controlled not by us but by the government, and it's quite cutthroat here. If you get a first for your undergrad, then you'll be entitled to a £3,000 bursary. And if you don't get a first, then there's no option for you there, I'm afraid. Is that it's quite harsh, isn't it? But it's quite clear, right? So you've got a whole year now to knuckle down and try and get one of these. But that's just the way it is, we have no control over that.
Can I just ask, is there a time limit for the first? Like if you've already got an undergrad and you hadn't got first, are you still eligible for that?
What, so you're doing a second undergrad now?
No, I'm into postgrad already.
Okay. Oh, okay.
But I got a first.
Yeah, I'm quite sure that you qualify, yeah. Well done.
Thank you.
You have lots of friends when you start, I think. Here we go. So, the big question always, and I've been asked several times at the desk already, what is the difference between provider-led and schools direct? So, the first thing to say is, you apply it in the same way because you do it all the time through UCAS, through your application, and you have different preferences that you can choose on your application. And it will be quite clear which is provider-led and which is schools direct. So I'm just going to go through the provider-led process first. So through the UCAS, you're applying to us. So it's likely that me and my colleagues will eventually read your application. We will obviously also interview you, and you'll do most of your training here at the university. We will choose which schools you're able to go to, and there will be 3 different placements throughout your PGCE year. And we try hard to make sure that these placements are varied. So if your first placement is inner city school, then we'll try and find your next placement in a different school so you get lots of different experiences. On to schools direct now, so still through UCAS, but then your application would go directly to the school. They will interview you and they get you into schools quite quickly. You're sort of based at that school. So there's a suggestion here that you're more of a teaching apprentice and you learn your trade that way, as opposed to being at the university, and as it says there, being a reflective practitioner. However, at Schools Direct you do 2 placement schools within their alliance. So they will choose the schools for you. And it's not, even though you apply to one particular alliance of schools, you won't necessarily have your placements at the school you're kind of based at for your training. They might send you out to different schools that way. Salaried positions are available. Now, I don't know much about that because I'm from the provider-led side, but of course that's a conversation you need to have with people in the room, in the acre room today. You need to ask that question. Some might say no, there's not any with us, and some might have other options. So, currently, in fact, I heard some people in the sports centre this morning, some undergrads chatting away, and they're saying, yeah, I've only got 8 hours this semester, 8 hours contact time. Well, PGCE is very, very different. So with PGCE, you'll start at the beginning of September, and you'll be pretty much full-time until the middle of October, when you go out on your first placement. And it's not a case that you can just not bother going to a certain lecture. You have to be at everything, because otherwise you're not ready to go out to school. So it really is quite a shock to the system. It really is a big, big difference to being on an undergrad degree. We try to get you to make sure you teach different phases, different key stages. So for example, if your first placement, you're in key stage 1, then your second placement will be key stage 2. And that means when it comes to your third placement, we can ask you the question, which do you prefer? Which are you leaning towards that you prefer the most? And we'll try to meet that request so that you can start to hone your skills in a particular area. Now, obviously, it's a tough year. You need lots of support. So the main different types of support you have is, first of all, you have a mentor in your school who will obviously be an experienced teacher. It might be the teacher you're working with in their class, but it might also be a different person, and you have a big support network within the school. And you will also have, at the university, you'll have a link tutor for support, and that will be the person who comes out and supports you at school, observes your progress at school, and gives you tips on how to keep achieving your teaching standards. And you will also have a personal tutor at university, and that is a person who you'll meet at the end of every phase, where you can sign off basically that you've passed each phase. The first phase, you teach 50% of a regular teacher's timetable, and then that starts to get more up until the third phase, which is in the spring term, and you will teach 75% of a full teacher's timetable. So it's really getting you in and getting you as experienced as possible for the September when you'll get a job, but experienced as possible, still with that little gap, that little space to give you the support that you need. And in addition, we also expect you to undertake 2 5-day placements in a higher and low key stage experience. What that means is, if you choose 5 to 11, you'll spend 5 days in an early years setting to experience the children who are coming to you, and you'll also experience 5 days in a high school setting. And that's so, of course, you can get an understanding of what you're getting your pupils ready to move on to. If you choose 3 to 7, you'll do the same thing, but it's slightly different. Your early key stage will be with toddlers and babies in a nursery setting, and then your older phase will be in a key stage 2 setting, because that's where you're passing on after they're 7 years old. Excuse me. So, on to the modules then. The reason it says PGCE modules is because by passing these master's level modules is what makes your qualification a postgraduate certificate in education. So you see that they are quite generic types of teacher-related subjects that you will go into in quite good depth. As I say, it's level 7, it's master's level, so there's quite a high expectation. During these particular modules, we often bring professionals in from the industry, and they come in to talk about behaviour and about learning outside the classroom and about use of technology and so on. And these all help you to start to form your philosophy of education. And the practitioner inquiry one in particular is where you actually do a little bit of research in the school that you're based at. It's not the same as your dissertation though, it's just a little bit of basically observation, professional conversations, and that helps you to write up your assignment. These generally, each module requires a 4,000 word assignment, although module 2, practitioner inquiry, is 1 presentation, which equates to 2,000 words, so it's half of the mark, and then a 2,000 word reflection after that. I'm not going to go through all of these, but of course these are all of the generic teaching modules or teaching skills that you will cover on our provider-led route. So you can see things like applying for jobs towards the end, of course, very important to get tips on how to do that. Subject training, of course. In primary, of course, you've got to teach everything. You've got to be as amazing as possible at everything, with a main focus on the core subjects of maths and English and science and so on. But then, of course, we kind of get you to a certain stage, and then you go out to schools and that's when you flourish, and that is when you get proper practice by actually teaching children and getting the mentors to help you progress as well. So there are some places that you can look for further information. We have paper copies of our prospectus on our table in the Acre room, but all the information is also online. And there's just some other information there. The application for UCAS opens on the 26th of October. So that's worth looking at, and we're about to go through some suggestions on how to make that a good process. So we have basically this slide that explains what happens once you've applied. So we get your application, and the admissions team check that you meet the criteria for getting onto our course, and if you do, you get to the next stage. And what happens there is, we'll check a little bit more detail if you have, for example, not just the correct qualification, but relevant and enough experience. And if you meet these second sort requirements, that's when you'll be invited to interview. So it'll be here at the university for the provider-led, or out at the school for the school's direct. So here's the entry criteria. So there's a lot of stuff there, I'll just try and make it really simple. So basically, you need to get a 2-1 for your degree, or it's saying here, if you have more experience, we may consider a 2-2, but that would tend to be those who perhaps graduated a while ago and have spent years in school, rather than just an extra week here and there. It's important as well that you show you have a good kind of ability in some of the core subjects. So you see here, Maths, English, Science, we expect you to have a C grade in all of these. Now if you're sitting here and don't have that, it is possible to try and catch up and make that happen. And then also, we expect you to have at least 150 hours of classroom experience. So that's what we consider substantial experience. Now if you say you count everything up and you're at 130, for example, then it is worth applying, and perhaps in your statement you might want to suggest that you intend to continue volunteering in a certain capacity, for example. So it is worth just making that point there. On my course, the PE course, the criteria is the same, although of course would expect you to show an interest or have some more experience in actually teaching PE or coaching sport to children, in addition to the classroom experience. Is that okay? Good. So regarding school experiences, when you're telling us about it, just think of all the stuff that is absolutely relevant to what you're applying for. So if you're applying 3 to 7, it wouldn't really work if you shout about all the year 6 work you've been doing. Because I've seen it happen. And I've even had, on my course for 5 to 11, someone with tons of secondary experience and no primary. So it doesn't seem to make sense that, but people do add that into the UCAS application. So be very careful, please, what you're shouting about. Now, on your personal statement, I'm just going to stress this part first. This is the maximum number of characters, so not even words, the maximum number of characters that you are allowed for your statement. And quite simply, it won't allow you to have any more on that part of the application. So your reasons for wanting to be a teacher, really important. We're not going to hold you to it if you kind of suggest a bit of a philosophy. It's really good to hear that, but again, that will develop as you grow as a teacher. So we're not really expecting you to stick to that for the rest of your life. But a reflection upon how children learn in your phase that you're applying to is really important. To hear about other types of experiences with children you have is good to know about. So if you've done a Camp America style of experience, or if you volunteer with children in some other capacity, then it's really good to hear what that is like. If there's anything else to do with skills or transferable skills that you think will be relevant, then again that is good to know. Do you have a second language, for example? You might not think that is relevant, but it's really interesting to know. Or do you have a particular qualification in something that's not necessarily directly related to teaching? It's just good to know these things, so keep adding them in. And to demonstrate an awareness of current educational issues. So if you were to just have a comment about something you've read about, it's just good to know these things. I'm pretty sure you'd be asked something like that at interview, should you get there. So it's worth reading the newspaper, reading online and so on, or following certain educational issues, people on Twitter and so on, just so that you keep up to speed with what's going on. The UCAS application requires you to add 2 references. Now, one of them must be from a school that you've recently done some work in. So they must know you quite well and know what you're like with children in a school setting. If you don't have that, then you need to get one. You need to start volunteering in school and working with people so that someone will be happy and confident to write you a good reference. The most common referees you'll have is one school-based and maybe your personal tutor from university. That's quite a common little mix. But then, if you don't have anyone from a school, then we won't quite reject your application, but we will go back and ask for the information you need to get a reference. And that just adds time, doesn't it, to the whole process. So, the interview itself. If you are invited for interview, that will take place kind of from November onwards, from mid-November onwards. That will be with a panel of interviewers, and it will be a group of applicants trying to get onto the course. So there will be a little bit of teaching required, just a very brief little bit of teaching, which basically shows us you have a bit of a knowledge of what a particular resource or who a particular resource is relevant to. So for example, you wouldn't, if you stood up and tried to deliver an input using the book The Hobbit for year 1, it wouldn't quite work. So you've got to bring relevant resources. You will also do a very short numeracy literacy test that's using year 6 level words for spelling and so on, and a short written test, part of which is to assess again your philosophy, your stance on teaching, and a little look at your handwriting as well, because that's quite important for obviously being in the classroom. Now, if we offer you a place, it will be a conditional offer, because you then have to sit a maths and an English test. Different to the interview, you have to sit a maths and English test, and that will just show us that you have a basic knowledge, a basic skill level of maths and English that is required for being a teacher. The odd person has stopped their application there, they've not managed to pass these tests, and you get a couple of goes at it as well, but it is quite rare, to be honest. So there are some, this is who you're going to work with now. If you go schools direct, most of the alliances that are in the acre room are part of that process. You can apply for them through schools direct. And if you go with us provider-led, then we have literally hundreds of schools that we work with in our partnership around the West Yorkshire area. Now, we have this, it's quite an amazing system where basically you give us all of your details of where you live, do you drive, are you willing to drive, what is public transport like where you live, and so on and so on. And then we try to get schools that are appropriate to you. So what happens in the placement office is, we get an offer from a school, we go and try and, if an applicant or a trainee can go to that school, if we notice that they use public transport, the placement office will actually get onto public transport websites and pretend to do that journey. So even though it's a couple of miles, they might then realise that public transport means it's an hour's journey. So they'll have to make a decision based on that. But many, many options that way. Now, based on which particular course is your preference, I have here the course leader's details. So if you're thinking 3 to 7, which remember is the foundation, up to Key Stage 1, if you have any further questions, then Yinka is the person to ask. Yinka's surname, it's taken me a year to learn this, but it's Olushoga. She'd be really impressed if you said that well. Louise for the 5 to 11 and myself for 5 to 11 with physical education. If you have any further questions, then obviously you can go there. You can get these again on our website if you have any further queries. So that's my presentation finished. If you have any further questions, then feel free to ask now. If it's a bit of a almost personal question about your circumstance, I'm going to go back to the stand now, so you're very welcome to come and chat to me there. But if you have any generic questions, then I'm very happy to take them now. Yeah?
How much is this course?
How much is it?
Is it the full £9,000?
It's the standard cost. I don't get involved in that, to be honest, but it's the standard cost of a...
We had a lecture in PA, because we did PA on this. We heard that PE was like the most expensive. I was wondering if primary was cheaper.
I'm reluctant to answer only because I don't know for definite. So I just say I teach on it, but I don't get involved in that side. So feel free to go website and inquire through admissions and so on.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't be more precise. Yeah.
Do you know the reference?
I do.
Because I've like spoken to the teacher that I want to do a reference of the business tutor. But what do they do? Because do they get an email when we submit the application?
Right, this is a good point. It's really important. What happens when you do your application through UCAS? You can do it when the course opens,
Yeah.
which we believe is the 26th of October, like I said. When the course opens, you can apply. And I would suggest to you that beforehand, you get everything ready. You have your personal statement ready and everything, so you copy paste it on. Once you've submitted it, the emails that you've used for your references, they will then be sent a request to say that someone has put you down as a reference, and can you now add your reference to the application?
Okay.
So it's then they will get notification to write that application. Now, for your circumstances, for that teacher, if I was you, I would speak to the teacher beforehand, and I would say, I'm applying to do UCAS, here's when the course opens, I'm going to do it on that day, you're going to get an email on that day, so can I ask you, very politely, can I ask you to think about putting that reference together to lead up to that moment, so that even for them, all they have to do is copy paste it on. And if the busy people, of course, remember,
Yeah.
but if you prompt it in a nice way, then they might well get ready to just add their statement on and submit it really quickly. I do know circumstances where someone's used their head teacher and they've not really told them that they plan to apply, so it's quite a surprise, and they've no time, and it's taken a week or so for the reference to come in, and during that time the course is filled and closed. So there's a bit of almost tactics there to try and get your references in a good place to help you.
She asked me if there was like a certain like format or something that she needs to write in because she's never done it before. Is it just like...
It's a standard thing. If I was you again, I would work with that person to explain, here's the things that I've done
Yeah.
in the last year or whatever, here's the things I'd love for you to include. And you're not writing it for them, you're just kind of giving them pointers
Yeah, that's fine.
so that they don't miss any important things out.
Yeah.
And then you have to just leave it to them to do. Is that everything? So as I say, I'll be on the stand now, so you're very welcome to chat further. And can I ask our two colleagues to sign your name, please? Because you missed that part of the stand. Thanks for listening.